Just making sure everybody gets hooked up here. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm DrCathyO. I'm going to get started in just a moment, just waiting for people to come in on both of my pages. I've been telling everybody to go to the DrCathyO page, not my personal Cathy Owens-Oliver page, but I know people are going there anyway, so I'm going to try to do both tonight. And I moved my camera so everybody could see this. So, but good evening. Thank you for joining. I'll give people a few minutes to get logged on. Why don't you type in the chat box where you're joining from? If you'll just put maybe the city and the state, then I will know where some of you are joining from. Some of the names I recognize. Good to see all of you. Thanks for joining. So just let me know where you're joining from. Waiting to see what pops up in the chat box. New Jersey, Philadelphia. Hi, Kim. Thanks for joining. Type in the chat box where you're joining from. North Carolina, Atlanta, about 3 hours down the road from me. Maryland, Baltimore, my favorite place for seafood, next to San Francisco. Thank you, everybody. So good evening. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Dr. Cathy Owens-Oliver. You can follow me on all social media as DrCathyO, and thank you for joining in. Welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. As everyone is getting acclimated to this teach from home environment, I thought that I would host a few online Teacher's Lounge gatherings just to give you some encouragement, some inspiration, perhaps some teaching tools and strategies that I've been successful with in my lifetime. I've been teaching online quite a bit now because I teach an online college course. I teach career switchers. So all of my students have a bachelor's degree in a field that is non-education related, and now they're getting all the pedagogy and teaching coursework to become teachers. I love that because in order to move from another job into teaching means it's really what you want to do and you're sure about that. And so that's a good thing. And I enjoy teaching them introduction to teaching and just learning about pedagogy, the Danielson framework, the INTEST standards, what best practice looks like in the classroom, effective instruction, those kinds of things. And I'm not in the Teacher's Lounge to share all of that with you, but I do want to just give you some tips and strategies and ideas that might help you get through this new classroom without walls that you've suddenly found yourself in. I want these to be interactive. I do prepare a few notes and strategies to share with you, but I'll be looking at the chat box and seeing what you're writing to get feedback about different things that you want to hear about. If you want to write to me in advance, I'll be doing these every Tuesday and Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can write to me at info@drcathyo.com, info@drcathyo.com, and share with me any topics or ideas you want me to address, questions, issues, things that you're grappling with, and I'll be happy to respond to those. Speaking of me being adjunct faculty, I did get some feedback from a few people. Some of them were student teachers saying, hey, don't forget about us, Dr. O. We want to be in the Teacher's Lounge. And some of them are really anxious about going to work this fall, getting jobs, and not having finished their student teaching experience. Some of them feel like they didn't have enough time with their mentor. They didn't have enough weeks in the classroom. I have my own bias in terms of how clinical experiences work because, like a doctor gets a year-long residency. So I just think teachers need more time than just 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks practicing. It would just be great if they got a whole semester or in some cases a whole year teacher residency. We just expect them to always be ready on day one. And for those of you who are teachers now, can you imagine everything that you have to do and a new young teacher being expected to just know all of that on day one? When I look back at my first year of teaching, and I do remember my first year, thank you very much. I'm old, but I'm young. When I look back on those early days experiences and I think about some of the mistakes I made, I laugh at it now, but it gives me a heart for new and novice teachers and some of the things that they're dealing with. And new teachers aren't just young people now. They aren't all millennials. They aren't all in their early 20s. So everything that I share with you all tonight, I just want this to be helpful to you wherever you are in your teacher journey at this point. So for those of you who are just joining in, would you please write where you're from? I like to go back and read these later and see who joined us. I see Charlotte. I see Burlington, North Carolina. So it's good to see all of you all joining us. Please share this with all of your teacher friends. Share it with struggling parents who don't know what to do with their kids at home. You can share it with school leaders and principals if you want to. Any educator. To me, the theme, "It takes a village," means that everybody who works in a school building is critical to teaching and learning, regardless of what they do. Everybody in that building, because they have influence on those children's lives who they're with 180 days of a school year, or should be, unlike the climate that we're in now. So invite any of them to join us. Well, if you joined me last week, then you saw this. And I told you you could use this as an activity. I don't know how many of you used this Wednesday or today in your classrooms. If you're watching on my other Facebook page, I wrote it backwards just for you because I got feedback from people saying we couldn't see the sign. But for everybody else, here's mine. When you do this activity with your students, you should be quiet. So I'm not modeling that well, but I wrote my 3 things and I shared with everyone last week to use this as a hook to get your students thinking. You can have them do this online and hold it up to their camera and you could get a good view of what everybody's thinking and feeling. I started to do I miss instead of I am. I started to write I miss Starbucks. I miss hugs. I miss weekends with my family members, that kind of thing. But I wrote today I'm stuffed because, I've been doing a lot of eating. And as is the case, I think, with everyone else. But I've been doing a lot of walking in my neighborhood as well. I'm excited to be able to offer this Teacher's Lounge experience for you. I'm just giving back. That is all this is. I'm coming online live to take my 25 years of master teacher experience, having worked in 46 of 50 states with teachers, with college professors, with state departments and officials, with teacher leaders. I've worked across Canada doing professional development and professional learning. I've lived in 5 different states, all education work. And this is my way of giving back during this difficult time. I just want teachers to have an opportunity to wind down with me, maybe get a little humor, and here's some tips and strategies that you can actually use in your classroom. So last week or the other day, we talked about not sweating the software. So today I really want to talk about it's a different world. You already know that, but it really is a different world. Not just being in a classroom without walls. It's a different world because you are seeing your students perhaps in a way you haven't seen them before, and you are seeing their background in a way you haven't seen it before. You may have thought you knew your students' backgrounds, but now you're actually seeing some things in the background. I alluded to this when we met before, but I think it's really important to take some time to deal with this different world and to think through how you will appreciate students' lived experiences. Unfortunately, our education system sometimes makes us teach from a deficit perspective, in the sense that we look at certain things about a student, whether they are whatever characteristics they are, or stereotypes, or circumstances, or contexts, and we tend to judge them or make some assumptions about their learning, what they know and don't know, what they can or can't do. And I've learned in my years of experience that we do that, we meaning educators, too early, without having taken quality time to really find out what really is going on in their background. So it is a different world, not just being online, but being in their house. And it's a different world for them being in yours. Whenever I watch people's videos and everything on television, I just pay attention to, whether it's online or on TV, a movie, I pay attention to what's happening in the background. When I'm scrolling through social media and somebody will post something online, post something that they're doing with their students or with their children, or something happening in their home, their pets, whatever video they're sharing, I'm paying attention to what's in the background. I'm looking at the curtains, the pet, who's walking by, whether there are a bunch of dishes in the sink. I make jokes sometimes like, why don't these people clean their house? But in any case, you're doing the same thing you're looking at what is in that student's background and collecting some anecdotal data about what their lived experiences are, and they are doing the same thing with you, making judgments about that as well, trying to figure out what the connections are, comparing your home life to their home life, and you're doing the same thing. So we want to make sure that we're aware of this and we use it as a tool to meet students' needs. I think there are probably some parents who have looked online at what's in a teacher's home or background as well and made whatever kind of decisions or assumptions you want to make about that. So this is something we need to pay attention to. And I just want to share these three things, and then I'll try to follow the text box and see what you all are posting. 3 survival tips for this different world. 3 survival tips. Here's number 1. Be responsive and not reactive. Not only to what students say, but to what you see. Be responsive and not reactive. If you have ever had to learn to have a poker face, now is the time to have one. If you have ever had to learn how to resist the shock effect or the shock factor, now is that time. And students will probably try you in ways now that they wouldn't in the classroom, because it's not your controlled environment. It's theirs, and they can do what they want at home or in the family room or their bedroom or wherever they are. So you just have to kind of prepare yourself for that, but be responsive and not reactive to the things they say, the things they do. I have so many teacher stories, and I like to inject some humor in this. One of my friends sent me a text, and it was a picture of a note from a parent. And she said, "Have my 17 years of teaching been reduced now to this?" And it was a note from the parent that was put in an envelope with a makeup, some eyeliner or what have you. And the parent writes a note and says, "Listen, Miss So-and-so," to my friend, "we had an episode at home last night." And let's say the little girl's name was Kathy. I don't know what her name was. "We had an episode at home last night, and Kathy was playing with my razor while she was getting her bath. And she decided to shave herself, everything. And so she has come to school today with no eyebrows. Would you please use this eyeliner pencil to draw her eyebrows on throughout the day? Would you pay attention to whether or not she gets a smudge and fix it up for her so she won't be embarrassed?" And I laugh at that, because when you get a note like that from a student, and she said to me that she looked at the student's face and she wanted to just burst out laughing in the student's face. But what did I say? Be responsive and not reactive. Another friend told me that she saw an alligator in someone's house. When she said this, I said, "You didn't see an alligator." It was an alligator, Kathy, I'm telling you. I said, "It was not an alligator, it's an iguana." She's like, "Look, I know what an iguana is. It's an alligator in a fish tank." So I said, "Well, how do you know for sure that it's an alligator?" She said, "Because the parent went over closer to it so I could see it up close. It's an alligator in their house." So then we went into this whole conversation of, what do they feed an alligator? Are you serious? So be responsive and not reactive. Now, I kind of gave you some humorous stories, but you have to take into consideration what is really going on in these children's homes and their learning environment. And this will help you when you go back to school this fall, because you have to be very aware when you send homework what the home life is like. Sometimes there's no one speaking English in the home to help with the homework, but just learn to be responsive and not reactive. They're going to test you, and they're going to say anything in these online environments. So be very careful with some of your open-ended questions. Remember that you're teaching thinking, and know that they will say things to try to catch you off guard. You just have to be ready and be responsive and not reactive. Another example that I have that's not at all humorous. When I was growing up, I had a lot of limitations in my home environment, and it was quite often that we did not have a working television. And so that being said, I was in love with books. I read and read and read everything I could get my hands on. And I remember my teacher making a bookmark for all of us. Everyone got a little construction paper made bookmark from my teacher. And she had a chapter a night that she wanted us to read as she was introducing chapter books. This might have been 3rd grade or 4th grade. And I remember going home, and I probably read 3 chapters the first night. And I looked at that little bookmark and I thought to myself, there is no way it is going to take me 3 weeks to read this book. So when I went to school, being the precocious little Kathy that I was, I ruined the story for other students in the class because I was enjoying the story so much. I wanted to tell them what happened. And because I was a latchkey child with a single parent, my mother left to go to her first job when it was dark and didn't get home from her second job until it was dark. So I went to school on my own in the mornings, latchkey. My mother did my hair, laid my clothes out, and I went to school on my own, walked to the bus stop, came home on my own, ate all the cereal that I could find. I still have a little cereal trauma problem. And then would do my homework and work and work and work. I was afraid of the dark, so I would just get lost in a book. A book would take me somewhere. And I remember announcing in class one time something that was going to happen in the book, and my teacher got very upset, embarrassed me in front of everyone. She was reactive. Just imagine if she had pulled me to the side. First of all, if she had known something about my background, my family home life, and why I was reading so much every night, that would have helped her to be more prepared for what I needed. But suppose she had said to me, listen, you and I, we're fast readers. So you and I will have our own book club. Don't tell anyone else. We're not going to follow the bookmark and read one chapter a night. We're going to read as many chapters as we want. And then you and I will have a personal discussion. You can sit with me at lunch and we will talk about the next chapter that no one else has read yet. Just suppose she had been responsive to my local environment, my home life, my lived experiences. It would have been a totally different outcome. So I gave you more of a humorous side and a serious side, but in this different world, lesson number 1, be responsive and not reactive. Lesson number 2, teach to their strengths. I don't know if your principal or curriculum director quite understands this yet, because some of us are just getting into this online environment, but you have to teach to their strengths. Just accept the fact that you are not going to cover the rest of your curriculum and you are not where you want it to be in your standard course of study. No one is. Just accept that. Woosah. Just accept it. This summer, there's going to be a learning gap. We know what all the research says in the summer, that when students come back to school in the fall, they're 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, some of them 8 weeks behind. So you start off every new school year doing a review and in many cases, a remediation. Can you imagine what it's going to be like this fall? We pray we'll all be back in school this fall by August and September. Your students will be all over the place in their learning in terms of meeting benchmarks where they are in a learning continuum from A to Z. They will be all over the place. So don't let yourself succumb to the pressure of having to cover everything in the curriculum. In this different world, teach to their strengths. So include lots of activities that they enjoy, but that you know are strengths for them to get their wheels turning, to get them locked in, to get them engaged and involved. And parents, you need to know this as well. Teach to their strengths. If they're strong in reading, strong in math, do more and more of that, because, hey, listen, the objective is learning, period. The objective is that when these students log out at the end of whatever your class time is, they've learned something. That's the objective right now. It is not the 3 points you wanted to cover in your full lesson plan. It's not the whole outline you have in your mind and your mental map for this unit of study. At this point, you're teaching to their strengths. So in this different world, number 1, be responsive and not reactive. Number 2, teach to their strengths. This is going to help you too, parents. And then number 3, use their interest to strengthen them in areas of weakness or areas that need improvement. So I'm not saying don't pay attention to where the learning lag or the learning gap is. I'm saying use something they're interested in order to get their wheels turning. Listen, in this online environment, you have to teach like a champion, teach with passion, teach with fire, teach with courage, teach like the world has no end. I read all the books. You got to do your best teaching. I talked about this before, bringing your A game. And one way to get through to the students is to include things that address their interests. So let me challenge you for a moment. You could be anywhere on the P16 continuum, from preschool to the senior year of college, or anywhere on the K-12 continuum from kindergarten to 12th grade. If there was no discussion in any of your class ever about Kobe Bryant, that's interesting. Because 90% of children everywhere, not all of them, but 90% of students everywhere have some kind of connection to his life, what was, what it meant to the basketball industry, a friend they knew, someone else they knew, a sibling who loves basketball and or wants to get a scholarship, a dad who is or was a coach. There was some kind of connection that people all over the world made. That's a perfect example of how you could use student interest or current events or what have you to connect them and then use that in whatever lesson or whatever topic that you have planned. So these were just my 3 suggestions for tonight. In this very different world, this classroom without walls, here are 3 tips that might help you tomorrow and next week, and as you plan this weekend, if you're doing any planning this weekend. Number 1, be responsive and not reactive. Culturally responsive, personally responsive, intellectually responsive. Be responsive to their needs, to their lived experiences, to what's going on, to what they know, to what they don't know. Get their wheels turning, somebody wrote in the chat box. And then number 2, teach to their strengths. Now you first have to know what their strengths are, but teach to their strengths. If you haven't figured out now that my strength is talking and that I had the gift of gab, then you need to hone your skills. But how would you teach me in the classroom? You've got to get me talking. I won't do well just sitting and listening like this. So teach to their strengths. Point number 3, use their interests to get them engaged. Use something that they're interested in to address their areas of weakness, whether you teach math, whether you teach social studies, whether you teach science. If you are teaching science right now to any grade level and not talking about COVID-19, that's interesting. Because that's something that they already want to talk about and deal with and that kind of thing. So it's important that you do these things to get their wheels turning. I'm going to do a short activity with you again. I've done one before. I'm going to do one now. So I have 3 cards, a green card, a red card, red, and a gray card. I do this with adults. I do this with college students who are adults. I've done this with my high school students. I taught 8th grade at once. Very traumatizing experience. K-8 is not my forte. But I've done this activity with 4th grade Sunday schoolers. Any case. So green, red, and gray. So your students may not have these cards. You may want them, you don't want parents have to go out and buy it. So they may have 3 things in their house that are red, green, and gray, or you might just do red and green, or you might hold up the cards and then you have them type in the chat box. That's what I'm going to do with you all tonight, red, green, or gray. Don't type anything right now. So I'm going to ask a question. If you think the answer is yes, you agree, then green would be your color. You don't have a green card, so you're going to type green in the chat box if green is your response. If the question I ask, you say, no, I definitely don't agree with that, absolutely not, then red would be your color. You'll type red in the chat box. And if you're not sure, if it depends, if there are some caveats, if we need further discussion, if it depends on how you look at it, then you'll type gray in the chat box, okay? I'll ask a question. Green means you agree. Yes, absolutely. Red means no, absolutely not. Gray means, well, it depends. There are different ways you can look at it, okay? So here's the question. Will there be a cure? The word is cure. Will there be a cure for the coronavirus by the end of this month, April the 30th? That's the question. Will there be a cure? You're going to type in the chat box right now. Green if you say yes. Red if you say no, absolutely not. There will not be a cure by the end of this month, April 30th. And gray if you say it depends. So type your answer in the chat box, red, green, or gray. Will there be a cure for COVID-19, the coronavirus, by April 30th of this month? I see some people typing their color. Red, you say absolutely not. Green, yes, there will be a cure. Gray, it depends. There's a caveat. We need to discuss some of the variables. Type your color, red, green, or gray. This is an example of an activity that you can use with your students at almost any grade level. You could do it just the way I've done it, where you have the cards, they don't, and you're showing them the colors and telling them what you want them to use. You could do other colors, but for most kids, red means no or stop, green means go, and gray area usually means I'm not sure. You could have them collect artifacts around their house. Listen, Christmas ornaments, they're going to have a red one and a green one, so you could do this activity with them. So let's see, some people put red, lots of people are putting red. Let me see what people are doing online over here. Red, I see. Oh, I see a couple gray, and I see a couple. Oh, the teachers that I know are writing gray. The student teachers are writing gray. All of the people that I know are teachers are all writing gray. I love this. This is going exactly like I had planned. So listen, keep this in mind while you're in this online environment. Listen, don't sweat the small stuff. Focus on this. You're teaching thinking. Just make a little Post-it note, put it on your nightstand tonight, put it on your computer in the morning. I am teaching thinking. If you will always remember that you are teaching thinking, then you will be successful, because that means in every lesson you have had them to think deeply, to think critically, to do some problem solving, to have questions in their mind, to roll over things in their mind, to let it marinate, to try to figure it out. That's really what you want to do, because you want to make this classroom without walls engaging. And what did I say earlier? When they log out, you want to make sure that they learn something. Okay, so now you want me to tell you what the answer is. I don't know. And teachers are so afraid of that. You don't have to know the answer. Because why? You're teaching thinking. Now, what would my choice be? I would say gray. And as I scroll through here, most of the people who I recognize as teachers, a lot of you said gray. So if you said red, absolutely not. There will not be a cure for the coronavirus by April 30th. Then you're taking into consideration all the people who have not been tested, all the different task forces that are working on this, the fact that this has been an issue since November, not February. That's a great conversation to have with your students. When did the United States first learn about this virus? That would be a great question to have. But if you said red, you took all of those things probably into consideration. If you said green, yes, then you're very hopeful. You know that the United States in particular is very forward thinking in terms of science, human pathophysiology, biotechnology, molecular research, all of these kinds of things. So you're thinking yes, because they've been working on it all this time. They have these different drugs that they've been trying out. They've learned a lot from China and other countries. Surely by the end of this month, they're going to have a cure. And you might be saying the president said so. Of course we will. So you said green, absolutely. But most of the educators, and I don't know all of you, so of the names I recognize of people who said gray, most of the educators are thinking we don't have an accurate answer because there are so many variables. What if there are different strands? Is it actually a cure or is it a temporary antidote? The things that they've tried already, they worked for some, but they didn't work for others. There were some who took certain medications and they got better. Some took medications and they didn't. If you've been following the news, we've been hearing, I heard that it was better for people to lie down and just rest and kind of, let it work its way out of your system. Then I heard recently you don't want to lie down and rest. You want to keep moving and keep your blood working and keeping all of your everything circulating the way it's supposed to. We were told earlier, take all the medications you would take for the flu. Then we heard, don't take those medications. Definitely don't take ibuprofen. And then we heard we need more ventilators. We need more ventilators. I heard in the news and I saw in some research that ventilators actually don't help some people because then their lungs stop. It's hard for me to explain because I'm not a scientist, but what was explained in the research was that they don't have their lungs getting stronger and kicking back in. Their lungs get weaker because they don't have to work so hard. So if you said gray, I'm not saying it's the right answer. I'm saying that it would be my answer. But it doesn't matter necessarily what the teacher's answer is. Why? Because we're teaching thinking. That's my focus for you. In this different world, this classroom without walls, just keep in mind that you are teaching thinking. And for the student teachers who wrote to me saying, don't leave me out because I'm at home and student teaching is over, but I didn't get everything I needed. So I want to get tips and strategies and suggestions as well. So this works for you. That's an activity that you can use. Go into this profession understanding that you're teaching young people to think for themselves, to make good choices. Listen, if you're a parent and you're not teaching thinking, you may be missing the mark, because part of parenting is having a certain level of assurance that what you've imparted to your children will still be there and work for them when they need it. That when they're in a situation that you're not in, then they will make the right decisions. Okay, so teaching thinking. So in this different world, there were 3 points that I gave you. The first one, be responsive and not reactive. Responsive to who students are, what they need, what they're thinking and feeling. Be responsive and not reactive. The second one was teach to their strengths. What you know they're good at already and what is a strength for them in their learning, use that more and more to get them engaged. And then the third one is to cater to their interest, teach their interest, use their interest to strengthen their areas of weakness. If you know that I have a weakness in some area, but then you know that I enjoy reading, then in order to strengthen my weakness in that particular content area, I need to read about it because I enjoy reading. So these were just some little strategies, tips, and tools that I hope have helped you. I want to hear your questions, your thoughts, ideas. So type something in the chat box, and so I'll look at what some of your questions or comments are, and I'll try to respond to those. I see that somebody wrote prayerfully green when we were doing the red, green, and gray part. Prayerfully green. I love that. Classic sign of the overachieving students, because students desperately want to be right. So the concrete sequential ones and those who are a little borderline OCD will struggle with any assignment that doesn't have just red or green. They'll struggle with the gray area because students just want to be right. Students just want to get an A. I had a student, this is an adult, and as one of my college students in my online class last semester. And she wrote to me about 3 weeks before the end of the semester to say, it looks like from my calculation, I'm going to have a 98. Could you please share with me what I need to do to get the other 2 points? And I thought, oh my God, for real? Because this person is going into teaching. She's going to meet students like her. It's not about the 2 points. It's about having done your best work. And it's about me teaching thinking, not teaching things that will ensure that you get 100. So please write your responses to me. I want to see what your thoughts are. But when somebody wrote a few minutes ago, prayerfully green, I just imagine that person saying, I hope I got the right answer. But when you're teaching thinking, it's not about the right answer. It's about having an answer that you can justify, even though the teacher or others in the group may disagree with it. Okay, so I want to read some of your questions. Somebody's writing here. I have to do phone calls for students that don't have technology. Do you have thoughts on what those calls should cover? Yes. So I didn't really get into this much. I covered this in part 1. But there are lots of students who don't have devices at home. And I mean students of all ages, not just in a K-6 environment. You would be surprised at the high school students, college students, students at all grade levels who are doing their online work on a phone. And those of you who are teachers aren't surprised because you're seeing it in their class, in their homes now. I almost said classroom, in their home classroom. And lots of schools and states have provided the technology that they need. But for those who don't have it or can't use it, then you will have to have other ways to reach out to them. So Liz Miller has written in the chat box that she has to do these phone calls for her students that don't have technology. What should the calls cover? The call should cover a conversation about whatever you're covering in the class that they miss. So everything that I have done with you tonight, I could have that conversation with you over the phone. I wouldn't be able to show you a red and green card, but I would say, now imagine a stoplight. Imagine a stoplight. You're controlling the stoplight. I'm going to ask you some questions. And based on your answer, I want you to tell me if the stoplight has turned green, has it turned red, is it still yellow? Same thing, same imagery, same visual, but you're doing it through a conversation. Talk to the students about what they enjoy, what's going on in their home life. And let me just say this, I'm glad you asked that, Liz. This is a good time for you to have interviews with all of your students. Have a phone call with all of them, whether they are 5 years old or 15 years old. Have a one-on-one phone call. I do that with my adult students who are age 19 to 56. And I have a one-on-one phone call twice a semester with all of them, even though we're seeing each other online. So on this call, understand their lived experiences, find out what's going on at home, how learning is going. And with the younger students, tell them to decide what they want to talk to you about. You would be surprised, because if you create a cookie cutter plan or a protocol for what you want to talk about, it may not be what interests them. It may not be what engages them. But if you tell them, we're going to have our call on Thursday afternoon, we're going to have our call on Friday morning, your call is at 9:12. Write it down. Your call is at 9:12. And I need you to start thinking now about what you want to talk about and let them talk to you. They may want to talk about the alligator in their house. They may want to talk about the coronavirus. They may want to talk about why their parent who is a teacher is giving them extra work that you don't assign, because I have a friend whose child said that. But they're all different things that they want to think about. On Sundays, I've been watching several church programs online, and I have my 84-year-old mother here at home with me, and her pastor is doing a conference call as opposed to just the online environment. And it dawned on me, it just made me think about how many elderly people out there who are in their homes, whether they have Wi-Fi or a computer or not, but those definitely who aren't using it, they don't have the access, or they may not have the skills and knowledge. They're just not technologically savvy. So how are they, hearing whatever their pastor is talking about, or getting that ministry on Sunday, if that's part of their religious practice? So I think it's great that you have an alternative for students who may not have online devices at home, but you let the conversation be driven by what they're interested in and what they want to talk about. Any other questions in the chat box? Okay, so good question. Parents who don't cooperate, parents who don't want to get with the program and follow the protocol. So one of the landscapers in my neighborhood, I was out walking the other day. I have a story. One of the landscapers in my neighborhood said, I saw his boys outside, and he told me that he was using his boys to get some work done with him. And he said, listen, I have a strategy. I don't even think he knows that I'm a teacher. And he said, listen, I have a strategy. I'm working in the daytime. He's a single father. And he said, I cannot be helping them with their homework from 9 to 12. So I let them stay up as long as they want to. I mean, they're up to 3, 4, 5 o'clock. I don't care. He said, that way they are asleep when I do yards early in the morning. So I'm out of the house by 5 or 6, and they're going to sleep to 12, 1, 2 o'clock. Or I'm going to pick them up around lunchtime, around 1 o'clock or so, take them out to do a few yards with me. And then they're doing their work 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the evenings. And then, they're getting their dinner, their bath or whatever. And then I don't care how long they stay up. That's a strategy that works in his house. I have another friend who says that her students are going to night school. Her children are going to night school because they start doing their homework late at night, and they have the whole day to do whatever they want. So if the school context allows that kind of an environment, then that's great. But for these parents who are saying to your children, there's no end of grade test, you're not going to be graded, everybody's going to pass, it doesn't matter what you do. Sometimes you, as the instructor, you must understand your relationship primarily is with the student. That is your priority. So now the onus is upon you to make them want to learn, or to make them want to be with you, be fully present with you, and be focused on what you're teaching and talking about. And you make sure they get that while they're online, because you don't have any control over what kind of support environment they have once that online class is over. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So even if a parent says, you don't have to do this work because you're not going to get a grade, if it is focused on topics and things that your students are interested in, if you've used what you know about them to create a hook or use the right bait to get them engaged in the lesson, then you don't have to worry about that part. But certainly I wouldn't waste time or energy trying to have that conversation with parents who do that. I would just teach like my life depends on it. That's just a part of how I approach my work. And so I think if you do it that way, then you'll be fine. Let me see. Any other questions? Somebody asked about Teach Like a Champion. Oh, I don't have it right here. Oh, you can see it in the background. So Teach Like a Champion is one of the textbooks I use with my college students with the course that I teach online. I have students from all over the country taking online pedagogical classes. And so Teach Like a Champion is a great book. It gives so many different strategies of what to use in the class, like bell to bell. From the moment class begins until the moment the bell rings, you have to make sure that everything was intentional and connected to learning objectives and outcomes. So sometimes that's why I say that a lot. Just in theory, Teach Like a Champion. I think there's another book entitled that as well. That's not necessarily a textbook. A phone call helped my elementary child adjust when he heard from his teacher that this is how school must be now, and that she really does see his work. It makes the online work more personal, I think. That's good. So not addressing the parent, but addressing the student directly with the issue. Listen, if my teacher had tried to tell my mom, had tried to say to her when I was a young kid, you need to stop your daughter from reading ahead, My mother would have thought she was a blithering idiot. That just, my mother would have been like, what? So the fact, if this teacher had had a conversation with me, like the example I used earlier, we would have had a better relationship. So I love that you said that. Let me end with this tonight. In this work, you got to love it. Teaching is it's what I call a life work assignment. At least for me, it is. And I think that's because my whole entire life, this is all I wanted to do. I wish that upon you, because I think we who see this as our life work put 150% in it, and that's not an overkill burnout thing. It's an effectiveness thing. But this is life work, and you got to love it. So this may be kind of strong, but I have to say this. If during this classroom without walls experience, you discover that you really don't want to do this, don't do this. Because children need you more now than ever to show up in ways you haven't shown up before. And parents need that as well. And this is a really good time for deep reflection and a self-check to make sure you're in the right place and doing the right thing. But I just want to I want to end by encouraging all of you that you have what it takes to do this life work and do it well. So don't beat yourself up about, lesson plans and benchmarks. Just focus on making every online experience a meaningful one and making your students want to tune in for what it is you're going to tell them the next day. My prayer for you for this weekend and next week is that you will be able to get students engaged on screen, your on-screen classroom, in ways that excite them and keep them engaged in learning. And no matter what is happening in their home life, they want to be on your screen life, learning and contributing and getting everything you have to give. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Again, you can follow me on all social media at DrCathyO.com. I'm doing this experience in the Teacher's Lounge every Tuesday and Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can join me on my Dr. Cathy O Facebook page. Please share this with every educator, everyone working in a school that you know. And I'm just hoping that this is an opportunity that will give you hope along with teaching tips and strategies. Thank you for joining. Good night, everybody.